In the last video, we went over the Ricoh GR1 and how I really loved it because of how tiny and practical it was, always there to quickly make the picture. In the medium format photography world, such portability doesn't quite exist, but I found that certain cameras almost carry with it that same spirit of being nimble and agile. And one in particular is the Rolleicord. And that's what we're going to be taking a look at today. In this video, I'm going to show you everything about the Rolleicord and something in particular that makes it really special compared to other medium format cameras out there. And I'll also be sharing with you the biggest difference between a Rolleicord and a Rolleiflex to see whether or not paying 5 times the price might be worth it for you. So let's jump right in. All the pictures that you're about to see were developed with the Cinestill CS41 kit at home on a rotary processor. Now, just a disclaimer, before I got into film, I always found TLR cameras to be a little too steampunk, something visually nice but a bit too like hipster, but man was I wrong. Now, being a Canon DSLR guy, I was way too far towards the practicality side of things, so something like a TLR was just in a completely different wavelength to where I was at that time. Now, that was 2013. Now fast forward 10 years and I absolutely adore this camera. Not because of how it looks, but what it does differently compared to other medium format cameras. But first off, let's go over how this camera physically works. On the front of this camera, you'll see 2 lenses. The one on the top is the one that you're looking through, while the one on the bottom is the one that is actually making the picture. So this is a twin lens reflex camera, or a TLR camera, which is kind of the third way in which people attempted to solve the problem of how do I see what I'm making a picture of. It's kind of like the obscure relative to the SLR, the father who did the most work and then gave birth to a more hip TikTok using, technologically savvy child, the mirrorless camera. Then there's the rangefinder, the older uncle, the one who is still a badass, still serving in the Night's Watch, slightly outdated but still doing his best. And then you have the TLR, which is like the outdated aunt, I guess. Well, anyway, back to the camera. On the right side of the Rolleicord is the film advance knob. And that's the first difference between the Rolleicord and the Rolleiflex. With the Rolleiflex, you advance a frame of film and then cock the shutter by winding the lever back and forth. And then you make a picture by pressing the shutter release button. But with the Rolleicord, you advance a frame of film by turning the knob on the side, and then you cock the shutter by the lever at the bottom, and then you push the lever in the other direction to make a picture. On the other side, you'll find a focusing knob. And then you set your shutter speed and your aperture values using levers instead of knobs on a Rolleiflex. Now, something that you might not be able to tell by just watching a video like this on YouTube is the size and how compact the Rolleicord actually is. Now, this camera makes a big negative 6.6, which is still larger than any other digital medium format camera around today. But in the hands, it doesn't feel large or heavy at all. Its silhouette is about the size of a Leica, and it's also about the same weight of a Leica without a lens, so it's really light too. And so its size and its weight actually contributes to the thing that makes this camera really special to me compared to other cameras out there, and that is its nimbleness. You see, media format cameras sometimes carry with it a sense of formality, like with a Hasselblad 500cm. The Hasselblad is bigger, it's heavier, it's more dense, and its form and its mass kind of influences the way you make pictures with it. Now, the Hasselblad is by no means as formal as, say, a large format camera, but some sense of that formality is inherent with 120 film. And combined with the fact that you know you've only got 12 shots per roll, you tend to treat it with a bit more respect. So it brings out in you as the photographer this tendency to be a little bit more careful with your pictures. But that's something that the Rolleicord almost frees you from. Despite the Hasselblad and the Rolleicord using almost the same focal length and the exact same film, using them feels worlds apart. One feels formal and the other feels informal. Something about the shape, the form of this camera makes it feel really quick and super fast as a medium format camera. Like you could just quickly point it somewhere and make a picture of something. And it might sound strange and it's quite hard to describe as well, but the difference is tangible. Kind of similar to how a Ricoh GR feels compared to a big SLR camera. Both use the exact same 35mm roll of film, but one feels more informal, like a toy camera, and that shapes the kinds of pictures that you make with it as well. It's almost like the Rolleicord Rolleicord encourages me to take more risk, which results in the kinds of pictures that I make feeling very different. Not by any means making your pictures better, but just making them different. Now yes, you could arguably port that kind of mindset to a more formal camera, but that's precisely what I love about this camera. It subconsciously and effortlessly puts me into that headspace of picture making. Now what about the Rolleiflex? Compared to a 2.8 Rolleiflex, the Rolleicord is about 1/4 the price. And compared to a 3.5 Rolleiflex, the Rolleicord is about 1/3 to half the price. But the difference in price doesn't really reflect how these cameras feel in the hands. Build quality wise, to me, the Rolleicord undoubtedly feels as good as a Rolleiflex. If you're able to find a good copy of the Rolleicord and you get it serviced and lubricated, all the knobs, the levers, they all feel great. As nice as a Hasselblad or even a Leica. And I'm pretty sure if you passed both of these cameras to a random person, a Rolleicord and a Rolleiflex, they won't be able to tell you which one was a lower quality object. Now internally, there are some differences between them that makes the Rolleiflex a bit more reliable. So if you're buying a Rolleicord, make sure to get the 5A or the 5B, which are the newer models, and those are known to be very dependable. Now I'd say the most significant and practical difference between these two cameras, the difference that is probably going to be the biggest one that would help you decide between which is for you, is the difference between the pictures that they make. They do produce significantly different results because of the lenses they use. Without getting into too much technical details, generally the lenses in the Rolleicord are less technically proficient, they're less optically refined, and they're less sharp compared to the ones in the Rolleiflex. And this difference is tangible in the pictures that you get. The Rolleicord in general gives a softer, slightly more dreamy picture, less contrast, especially when shooting color film, less saturation. The Rolleiflex on the other hand is just insane. Like despite being 60 years old, optically speaking, it's still up there with the best modern lenses. It's super sharp wide open and it handles the hardest lighting situations with ease. It always looks clear and three-dimensional, and it handles the transitions in tones with so much nuance and refinement. And I can confidently say that the Rolleiflex is definitely in my top 5 favorite lenses that I've ever used. It's almost like it does the impossible, performing well technically while still holding on to character and charm without feeling modern or clinical. Now let me clarify that it's not like the Rolleicord has a bad lens. Just stop it down to 5.6 and the Rolleicord makes super finely detailed pictures that I'm very happy with. And despite the lens of the Rolleiflex being so good, it's not like they're worlds apart. Just to give you an example from a purely technical perspective, if I rated the Rolleiflex at say a 9/10, I call the Rolleicord say 7.5 or an 8, so there is a difference between them, but they're still somewhat close. And also let me clarify that while the lens on the Rolleiflex is optically and technically better, it's not by any means absolutely better, it's just different. For me personally with color film, I always tend towards something with more contrast and more saturation, so my 2.8F always has color film in it. But with black and white pictures, I always tend towards something softer, something less technically precise. And in fact, my favorite Leica lens is actually technically a very poor performing lens, the 35mm pre-aspherical Summilux. If the Rolleiflex was a 9/10, then the pre-aspherical Summilux is like a 4, a 5. If you shot that lens wide open on a test chart, all you'll see is softness, but despite that, it's still my #1 pick for my personal work. If you're interested in that lens, it's the first lens that I reviewed here on YouTube, so you can check that out, but just keep that in mind. While the lens on the Rolleiflex is technically better, it isn't absolutely better, and what might fit you best is dependent on what flavor you prefer. If you're the kind of photographer who values sharpness, clarity, contrast, then for sure choose the Rolleiflex. But if you're looking for something with more charm, with more character, a bit more fragility, then I think the Rolleicord is an amazing option, and to this day is still my go-to option for a charming 6x6 black and white picture. That's all for today's video. Jeremy here. If you enjoyed that, let me know in the comment section below. Subscribe and I'll see you in the next video.